U.S. President Trump putting the nation at odds with almost every other country in the world by pulling out of the Paris climate deal. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have criticized the decision.
Now, for more on the political fallout, we're joined by senior political commentator and former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm and Myron Ebell, the Director of International Environmental Policy at a Washington-based advocacy group, the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He also led President Trump's EPA transition. Thanks to you both for being with us. Governor, let's start with you. I think John Kerry, who was there on the big day, called this a grotesque decision and an abdication and one of the most self-destructive moves ever made by a U.S. president. Your thoughts, first of all?
Well, this is a horrible decision. And it is really, he says that it's based upon economic concerns, but what he's doing is hurting, and I say this as a governor, the states that have really created jobs in clean energy. There are 3.3 million people in America who are working in the clean energy sector. In my state, it's almost 90,000 people. He talked about Ohio. There's 90,000 people there who are working in clean energy. It's as though he has written that off. Those markets internationally that we want to be able to make products in America and export them abroad, who knows whether those countries will accept it. The thing that kills me about this the most, and we're on CNN International, and I feel like I want to apologize to the rest of the world for what our president is doing, not just to our country, but to the globe. But here's what kills me about this is that the next, between now and 2040, 60% of the new energy installation that's going to happen across the world is going to be in clean energy, zero emission energy. 64% of it alone will be in wind and solar. It's a travesty for the United States and for job creation here.
Myron Ebell, I know you're kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum here. The U.S. is really virtually standing alone. It's basically the whole world almost, and the United States is the odd country out. Also, America has caused much of the problem because the United States is the world's second largest emitter of carbon gases. Does the U.S. have a moral obligation to do something about it?
This is a great day for America, and I think it's a great day for the world, and I think the world will see that eventually. The United States, under President Trump, is trying to lead the world in a new direction to lead to a brighter future. Our moral responsibility, as he pointed out, is to the workers and the consumers. Governor Brown, your previous guest, said that California is doing great. Well, California has double the electric rates of the national average, and the national average is too high.
Responsibility, sir, to those people in these poor countries who are disproportionately affected and bearing the brunt of what America and China, the majority of has caused in terms of pollution and the warming of the climate. I mean, you don't think the United States has a moral obligation to that?
I think you've got it exactly opposite of the truth. We have a moral responsibility to prevent the energy poverty that is part of the Paris Climate Treaty. This agreement will cost the world over $1 trillion a year, and its effects on the climate are imperceptible. According to the accepted UN methodology, if every country lives up to its agreement and makes the cuts that it has promised, it will avoid 5/100ths of a degree of warming, 5/100ths of a degree of warming centigrade by 2100. It's totally imperceptible, and yet the costs in terms of people who don't have electricity in India, the electric rates in Europe where people are freezing in the winter. And by the way, this idea that California is a green economy, what they've done is they've closed down all of their energy-intensive industries, and they have outsourced those goods to other states and to other countries. The same thing has happened in Europe.
This notion that somehow clean, renewable energy is expensive has been roundly debunked. As of December of last year, solar and wind are cheaper even than natural gas. It's cheaper than new coal and existing coal. In fact, in India, the coal plants that had been slated have been taken offline because coal is too expensive. China canceled 103 coal plants in January because it's too expensive. This clean energy that comes and that the fuel is free is the wave of the future. future, and this is why, from an economic perspective, not from a moral perspective, from an economic perspective, this is why Bloomberg New Energy Finance has said this is why solar, wind, other clean technologies are on the rise. And the shame of it all for America is that the workers that you talk about, Mr. Ebell, the workers are the ones who are building these products and are not going to now potentially have access to international markets where they would have an easy path if we were part of a global economy. How can we see a president who has turned down who's basically said blank you to every to 99% of the scientists, to almost 100% of the countries, 190 whatever countries, how can we, and 300 corporations in America, he has turned his back on all of them, but especially the workers.
I guess, Mr. Ebell, the point there being, I mean, when we talk about responsibility to workers and that is a very real concern, and the President will say he's really implementing a campaign promise, and he was elected to do so. All very fair enough, but isn't the responsibility, if you accept what scientists are saying, and pretty much everyone does, isn't the responsibility to the planet? And we can't just keep going on like this.
If Governor Granholm is correct, then wind and solar and other renewable technologies no longer need government handouts, government mandates. The Paris Climate Treaty is not necessary, nor is the Green Climate Fund. So if the market can decide and wind and solar will win, then what's the problem? The fact is, of course, that most of the poor countries in the world are in the Paris Agreement because of the Green Climate Fund. They want the money. As long as India said we will make.
They want energy.
No, I'm sorry. India said. No, if you read what India said in its nationally determined contribution, they said we will make the emissions cuts if the developed countries pay for them. Otherwise, we're going to go for cheaper coal-fired electricity. That's what they said.
Well, but it's not been the case, because the price of coal has dropped so much that it is much cheaper for them to adopt wind and solar. And just to the moral argument and to the climate argument, yeah, we do. We are part of a globe. This is our common home, as the Pope has said, and who gave his Laudato Si encyclica to Donald Trump, which he obviously turned his back on. We have a responsibility. These issues of climate and emissions are not in a silo. We all share the air that we breathe. We all share the earth that we stand on. And yeah, we do share responsibility to the workers. It is just a shame that our president does not see that.
Just quickly, because we're talking about the coal industry, and this question is for you, Myron. Do you really believe the coal industry is savable or revivable, as President Trump is promising to bring the coal industry back? I want to show you some numbers before you answer that question, because the coal companies employ 164,000 workers, and you can compare that to natural gas industry, which employs 362,000 workers, solar industry 374,000, wind industry 102,000, and compare that again to 164,000 coal companies in the United States. Also, the solar industry job growth expanding, 17 times faster than overall U.S. job growth. So again, there are clearly market forces at work here, Myron. When you look at these numbers, do you see a future in the coal industry?
Yes, because the fact that you're not considering is that these workers provide a very high-value product. Those 164,000 workers produce more than 10 times the amount of energy every year than the 10 times more people that there are in renewables. The people in the renewable industry are providing very little energy, and that's why coal has a future, because each coal miner is responsible for producing a huge amount of energy compared to people in the renewable sector. So these are high-paying jobs, and they're very productive jobs.
It was interesting. India, I think, just recently had a record storage from solar. They're certainly turning in that direction. I wish we had more time, but we don't. Governor, thanks so much. Jennifer Granholm and Myron Ebell, thank you very, very much.
Thank you both for joining us for this discussion.